Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with an awesome new knife consult for you. If you follow my channel at all, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Brian Nadeau's work. I've actually owned two of these mini Typhoons. The Typhoon was Brian's original folding knife design. It was a 4-inch version. The mini version is a 3.5-inch version. A lot of people kind of made fun of Brian for calling this mini when in fact it's still 3.5 inches. So he went ahead and people were asking him for an actual mini version. So now he has gone and produced the Micro Typhoon, and that's what you're seeing in front of you here. Brian has been kind enough to supply two different variants of the Micro Typhoon prototype right here, and we're going to go ahead and get into these and talk about what each one of these has. The pre-order for the Micro Typhoons has already passed. So he opened the books for these a couple of months ago, and a bunch of people bought in. These knives are about to be shipped out later in June, maybe in July, about a month from now. These should start hitting people's hands. But these prototypes are representations of what we can expect, and we'll go into the details. So I'm going to go ahead and move the Mini Typhoon here off the screen. I wanted to say that these knives are made in collaboration with Reate Knives. Now, Reate Knives is a Chinese company, and it's actually kind of funny because Brian, being a member of the Knife Nuts podcast, had some pretty strong opinions about Chinese manufacturing and things that are going on. And so it's interesting to see that he's going with Reate to make these knives. But I must say he made an excellent decision because I really appreciate their fit and finish and quality. And it really shows here, and we'll show you why. So moving ahead here, let's get some vital signs on these guys. As you can see, these are 3-inch blades right here with about 2.75 inches of overall cutting length. Back to the pivot, you're at 3.25, and the overall length is coming in at about 6.8 inches right there. So under 7 inches of overall size. That's a very impressive feat. This really is a micro version. This is the real mini version of the Typhoon going on right here. Let's get some measurements here. The blade stock is coming in at 127 thousandths on the nose right there. And here the handle thickness is at under 1/2 inch at 442 thousandths, or 0.44 inches right there. So we've got a nice size knife, a very small. The whole point was to make a much smaller, more EDC friendly variant of the Typhoon here. And the weight is coming in at an extremely impressive 2.73 ounces, and that is the same on both of these, as they are largely the same. Actually, this one is a hair lighter with the carbon fiber inserts. That's maybe something to keep in mind right there. In any case, let's go ahead and break these knives down anatomically. Now, there were 4 variants of this knife that were offered, and all 4 of them can be imagined by the combination of these two knives right here. So there are 2 handle finishes and 2 blade finishes. The handle finish is the plain titanium here with the carbon fiber inlay, and here we have a black PVD coated titanium with a white ivory G10 inlay. Maybe it's ivory micarta. Oh man, if I'm getting confused. I think it's ivory G10 though. I'm fairly certain that that's what it is. And then there are 2 blade offerings, as you can see here. There is an M390 blade and there is a Damasteel blade. So let's go ahead and break these knives down anatomically. I'm going to use this guy for the blade discussion. Let's talk about that blade. It is done in either, like I said, M390 or Damasteel in this drop point pattern. This is sort of Brian's classic drop point blade shape right here. It's got a very nice top swedge. It's got a very classic and very user-friendly shape at the bottom there, edge right there, nice area of flat, nice belly, and a nice tip right there. It is done in a full flat grind. Now, these prototypes are slightly different than what the final production models will be, in the sense that Brian asked them to make it a little bit thinner behind the edge. Imagine that, a knife maker wanting to make a knife that slices, and this thing is going to do pretty well. I carried the M390 version, and I actually did use this a little bit, and it cuts quite well as it is, so I imagine if it's a little bit thinner behind the edge, it'll be even nicer. Here you can see the M390 done in the satin finish. This is very, very nicely done in typical Reate fashion. Very nice fit, finish, and quality on all parts of the knife. There's a bit of jimping right here on the top that is aggressive enough to hold your finger, but not so sharp that it's uncomfortable. The Damasteel looks to be etched quite nicely. This is, oh, he told me the name of this Damasteel, but I've forgotten it at this point. But it's a very unique pattern. I don't know if I've seen this before. The patterns are extremely uniform and very interesting looking. I'm not a huge Damasteel guy myself. I ordered the plain M390 version, but you're going to get your money's worth if you go into the Damasteel pattern. Speaking of getting your money's worth, the plain M390 is going to be a $300 model, and the Damasteel variants are going to be $500. That's how much they were on the pre-order. That was another factor. I saved $200 by just getting M390, so pretty good price point on the $300. Let's go ahead and talk about the pivots here. In true Reate fashion, this is running on caged ball bearings. They're ceramic ball bearings. And the action is extremely smooth on both deployment and on bringing it back into the blade. Here we get into some of the intricacies of Brian Nadeau's work right here. I want you to take a look at his flipper tab. He has one of the best flipper tabs in the industry. On my Mini Typhoon, I have absolutely enjoyed having it because it looks like it's going to be uncomfortable. It looks like it's going to be sharp. But if you put your finger on that, it makes for an absolutely perfect push button, and it also is an absolutely perfect light switch. And that same ergonomic principle is carried over onto these. They have replicated his flipper tab to perfection. They've also replicated his choil right here and his logo. He always puts the BN on the flipper tab right there. An important thing to understand about the deployment of this knife is the detent system. So characteristic of Brian Nadeau's custom knives, he has developed what's called the integral detent nub. So if you look, there is a steel lock bar insert on his knives where he has actually milled out a detent nub. I'm going to try to get the light at the right angle to match the camera. There's a nub in there instead of a ball bearing that you see on classic folding knives. And this is his solution to two problems with the deployment of the knife. One, or with the action of a knife. One is the deployment, where you have to overcome the radius of the sphere of the ball bearing. And then on closure, you also have to overcome the ball bearing. At both points, you get a sort of a double action. You get a bump bump kind of an action rather than one smooth motion. So he had Reate develop two different variants. This one comes with a ball bearing detent. Maybe you can see that right there. There is a simple ceramic ball bearing. What this does, though, is when you close the knife, now it's stuck on the ball bearing right there. It has to overcome the ball bearing, and then it can close. Also, when you're opening, the knife will move over the ball bearing and then lock up. So it's sort of a double click on both the opening and the closing. However, he's given Reate the ability to produce his detent nubs, and so now this has his characteristic one sort of click action in both directions, because it allows the blade to ramp up smoothly on deployment and then lock up smoothly because the detent nub ends at the top of the blade. It just slides into place, and then there's no ball bearing to overcome when you close the knife. So a very elegant solution. I'm thrilled to see that he chose to go with his technique, and they have been able to execute it perfectly. The action on this feels every bit as crisp and as smooth and as unique as my custom knife. So you really are going to get the full Nadeau Integral D10 experience when you pick these knives up. Moving back to the handles, as I mentioned before, there are two different solutions here. There's the plain titanium with carbon fiber inlays. This is the one that I went with. So my knife is going to look a bit something like plain blade with the titanium handle right there. It'll be something like that. So that's the one that I went for. What you can rest assured is that the inlays are perfectly done. There's no transition points. It looks really nice. It's almost like a pseudo bolster lock on this side, the way that it looks. It's really, really cool. They're contoured and they're smooth and they are very, very light. You saw the weight. They're not internally milled. That's okay. It's got a backspacer just like Brian does on his custom knives, and it's got a clip just like Brian does on his custom knives. He also uses clips that have absolutely no hardware so that it's easy to maintain your knife. So basically, these knives are awesome. For $300, you're going to be able to get a full Brian Nadeau custom knife experience brought to you with the quality and consistency of Reate Knives. He's going to be showing some of these off at the Blade Show. I'm going to be really looking forward to meeting him and some others. I want to say thank you to Brian for sending these along. Go ahead and follow him on Instagram at Sharp by Design. Follow me at Dr. Frunkey. Click like and subscribe, and take care.